Good afternoon, all. Welcome to February's speaker series. It's so great seeing everyone this afternoon. For those of you who have not attended in the past, Dirigo Labs Speaker Series is a monthly event where founders and leaders share advice on how they overcame challenges, capitalized on their target market, and developed their product, providing you with actionable insight for your own products and processes. For more information, you can find us on Facebook or online at centralmaine.org or dirigolabs.org under our Speaker Series tab. I would like to thank our sponsors for this afternoon's conversation. This free event is presented by Dirigo Labs and is sponsored by CGI, Valley Beverage, Thomas College's Harold Alphon Institute for Business Innovation, and Bricks Co-working and Innovation Space. In addition, I'd like to say hello to folks watching remotely at home or from their office. This conversation is being streamed live and will be available for later viewing on our YouTube channel. This afternoon's conversation is presented by CGI with Jeffrey Beno, Director of Consulting and Emerging Technologies Practice for CGI United States. In this speaker series, Jeffrey will discuss how CGI has developed a migration toolset focused on document migrations to help customers through digital transformation via platform modernization and migrating applications from on-premises environments to the cloud, ensuring high-quality migrations with minimal impact to business operations. For those not familiar with CGI, CGI is among the largest IT and business consulting services firms in the world. CGI is insight-driven and outcome-based to help accelerate returns on your IT and business investments. And without further ado, I will hand it off to Jeffrey. Jeffrey, thank you for joining us this afternoon.
Thanks, Sabrina. Thanks for the introduction. Much appreciated. All right, let's get my screen sharing going. Just give me a few minutes here. One second, there's that one and this guy. Great, can everybody see my screen?
Looks great.
Awesome, thank you, much appreciated. Thanks again, Sabrina, for the introduction, and thanks for having me here today to speak about CGI and our cloud migration strategies, as well as CGI's intelligent migration platform. So really for today, from an agenda perspective, what I'd like to focus on first is really just give an introduction of myself and a little bit about CGI. Sabrina, although you did a very good job at that, so I won't go into too much detail there. Then we're going to talk a little bit about our cloud migration strategy and our approach and some of the insights that we've had from our clients in terms of their strategies in terms of moving to the cloud, how we would approach moving to the cloud, and the different strategies we take to help them with that journey. And then taking a look at our CGI intelligent migration platform. So depending on the type of cloud migration strategy a customer is going to go through, we developed a tool that is going to support a specific use case within some of those strategies. So it's not necessarily a tool set to do all your cloud migrations. It's specific to document migration. We'll go in a little bit more detail. And then I do have a little demo prepared for the team today to really take a look at, not necessarily going inside depth of our tool set, but really to show how we can leverage high performance scalability and show you in real time scaling up servers to be able to quickly transform data as we move it through our platform. And then finally touch on a little bit about some of the impacts that we do with our work in Waterville. So with that, I'd start a little bit about myself, right? So as we all know, I come from CGI. I've been working here for 15 plus years now and have a little over 16 plus years in our information technology and consulting experience. And I work in our emerging technology practice. And a lot of what we focus on is evaluating emerging technologies. So as our clients and our customers are moving to either the cloud or trying to take advantage of emerging technologies, we evaluate those tools and present those to our clients and really help them to advance as we move forward. A little bit about my work experience, 10 plus years in the life sciences industry, working for some of the top 10 pharmas that are out there. Early in my career, a lot of enterprise content management work. So that's been the main focus of my career. However, as that evolved, a lot of the work that goes into enterprise content management is document migration. So as you're moving from a legacy system to a cloud or just upgrading from a new platform, you got to move all the content and metadata into your target environment. So a lot of large scale document migrations that I've been involved in, which ultimately leads me to being our document migration subject matter expert within CGI. I'm also the product owner of our CGI Intelligent Migration platform, and we'll see a little bit of that today. as well as a solution architect for data integration. So a lot of the work I do is really architecting a lot of the data integration platforms that we have out there today, supporting, centralizing a lot of that data to be able to support business insights as our clients require. And then at heart, also a senior developer. I started my career doing development work, and I still enjoy doing that work today. So any opportunity that I have at CGI to dive into doing some development work, I'm all for it. In terms of free time, obviously I love spending time with my friends and family, but one of my big passions is golf. I enjoy doing that, taking long bike rides. And in the past 3 years, I just started getting into scuba diving. So that's been a new thing on my list that I enjoy doing. And then snowboarding as well. So anytime I get an opportunity to head up north, never been to Maine, but I hope to get up there that way. And I hear there's some good skiing and snowboarding up that way. So enough about myself. I'll talk a little bit about CGI quickly. We were founded in 1976. We got over 44 years of experience, and ultimately we're a large business and IT consulting firm globally, and we do a lot of work in many different industries. To name a few: health and life sciences, manufacturing, retail, telecommunications, a lot of work in the federal government, and also state and local government work, and many others. What we do try to pride ourselves in is really the proximity model. So although we're a global company, we don't necessarily deploy our resources. We try to deploy our resources close to the customers that we're working for many different reasons. One's to build that client and community relationship, to really be close to our clients, to be able to get face to face with our clients, instead of having people working on different time zones. Not that we don't do it, but we try to pride ourselves in that proximity model to really work closely with our clients. We've done over 9.3 billion in revenue. We got over, I think this number is a little low, but I think we're over 80 plus thousand consultants, 400 locations across 40 different countries, and we're serving, I'd say roughly, 5,500 clients with our end-to-end services. And along with a lot of the services we provide, and a little bit of what I'll be talking about today, is we have over 190 different IP-based solutions that are serving a lot of our clients that are out there. And we'll look at our CGI Intelligent Migration Platform today, which is one of our IPs that we recently developed over the past, I'd say, year and a half. So with that, I'd like to speak to everyone today a little bit about cloud migration. So we've worked, as CGI works with our clients, one of the things we like to do is go out and take surveys and really understand some of the global insights within with our customers, and really understand what their top initiatives are, and really where they're taking where they're really taking their businesses as we move forward. And through some of these global insight surveys, some of the top initiatives that we identified for 2022 is really optimizing the existing use of the cloud environment that they may have already put money into, right? And what they mean by optimizing that existing use is really, looking for a potential cost savings, right? So, hey, we already moved to the cloud. Now that we're in the cloud, now let's evaluate that to see if we're optimizing our use of that, and see where we can, is there any areas for cost savings? That's one. And then also, a lot of the initiatives are really, migrating this existing on-prem workloads into the cloud environment. So these are really two of the top initiatives that our customers want to take on in 2022 and beyond. Along with those questionnaires and those global insights, we also took a look at evaluating, asking our customers, excuse me, are they planning to migrate to the cloud within the next 2 years? And we wanted to slice that information, taking a look at IT versus business. And as we deduce some of those answers from, there's definitely a stronger trend with our clients to move more towards cloud-based solutions. However, you're going to see a little bit of differences here when it comes to IT versus business. Business leaders, in terms of actually using cloud-based solutions, as long as they're getting the desired outcomes of those solutions, they may not necessarily care whether that solution's on-prem or in the cloud. So in terms of responses, there's not a high push from a business to really to migrate towards the cloud. However, they will get benefits out of doing that that they may not realize, because a lot of the software as a solution services that are provided, whether it's in the cloud or on-prem, the fact that these services are in the cloud, a lot of these customers or a lot of these software providers do regular updates throughout the year. So instead of a business user getting new features every year or two, This is something that they may get every 1 or 2 or 3 months. So some of those new features of these applications will fold in to the process a little bit more easily. But what we do see from an IT perspective, this is really where our IT leaders are really directly connected to those costs and benefits analysis in terms of making those strategic decisions on whether or not we should move to the cloud to ultimately save time and money and be able to take their resources and put them more towards business development and maybe not so much towards managing infrastructure. So with these insights, CGI does have a process that we follow in order to transition our customers to cloud-based environments, right? And this is very high level, simplistic, not going into too much detail here, but 3-step process, right? Really assessing your application portfolio. We need to understand, of all the applications that our customers do have, we need to, understand what that full list is, review that list, and ultimately identify the appropriate transition strategy to the cloud. And even if there is a transition strategy to the cloud, there may not be the right time to do any transition, but you want to go through and assess your current portfolio to identify that. And we do that using the 6 R's. The 6 R's migration strategies, and I'll speak to that on the next slide. So we'll pause right there on that. But that's one of the first things we want to take a look at is the appropriate strategy for how we're going to do that transformation. And then as we get into the transformation, right? So, hey, we decided what we want to do with these applications. Now it's time to actually do the implementation of that transformation. So ultimately transforming all your applications and your IT assets to the cloud, retiring, or whatever you ultimately decided. But some of the key things in here that you really want to take a look at is where can we identify some cost reductions, right? And that is really around costs of your data center, costs of your new cloud environment, where you can potentially understand how you're using those services. Do we really need all those servers that we had in our data center? Can we operate in a less serverless environment and only use services that we need, ultimately reducing your costs? And we'll speak a little bit of that a little bit later. But then also increasing agility, right? Now that, as we're moving into the cloud, maybe you don't necessarily need all your resources and time and money spent on operating your data centers, and that can be focused more towards business development. And then also reducing risks. One of the key things with our cloud-based environments is some of the increased security that you can get out of that. So there's many different layers of security within a cloud-based environment that you may not have been able to take advantage of in your on-prem data center. Or maybe now you don't even need to worry about some of those security things because that's what the cloud provider is actually going to handle for you. Therefore, you're no longer worrying about some of the security that you needed to before, but you also have some of the new security features available within the cloud providers that you can take advantage of. So as you get through the transformation process of actually moving your applications, now you're in the process of managing those. So now you're fully operational, up and running in your new application. This is where you can take the opportunity for continuous improvement. And what I mean by that is you did all the assessment, you did the transformation. However, now that you have your application up in a new cloud environment, now you have the ability to do additional monitoring on that. Are we taking advantage of scaling up and scaling down? Are we always leaving our servers running? So you can have the opportunity to monitor that information and see where you can improve, and maybe not necessarily plan for scale and plan for load of your environments. So you have that opportunity to monitor your services and really be flexible and ramp up servers or ramp down servers as need be. And I'll actually show a little bit of that today in our demonstration. Now, I'm going to step back to the 6 R's, right? So when it comes to assessing your cloud migration strategy, you ultimately need to bucket your applications into these 6 different categories. And that's whether you're going to rehost, or replatform, refactor, repurchase, retain, or ultimately retire your system. And these are critical decisions that you need to make because depending on what decision you decide here, it's going to affect costs. It's going to affect time, resources, the effort involved in doing this transition. We'll talk a little bit about each one of these. So when it comes to rehosting, this is essentially just migrating your platform as is from an on-prem data center to a cloud data center, right? So you're not going to go in there and re-architect, recode. It's essentially replicating those same servers up in a cloud-based environment and then migrating your code into those servers and migrating into the data into those servers as well. But you're not necessarily fully taking advantage of all the services that a cloud provider could have for you. However, you are going to take advantage of now not necessarily having to manage those servers within your data center. So that's one approach. And that's the quick and dirty approach to get you into the cloud. And then from there, you can then evaluate later down the line whether or not you want to go and refactor or replatform. When it comes to the replatform, this is essentially migrating your platform as is, similar to rehost. However, instead of just, let's say you're on a SQL Server database in your on-prem environment and you're moving to a SQL Server on your cloud environment, well, this is where you have the opportunity to potentially look for cost savings or better performing applications. So instead of going from SQL Server to SQL Server, this would be where, hey, let's switch our database, right? Let's use a potentially more high performant database that's less costly. So you're not necessarily re-architecting your entire platform, and you're not changing it, you're moving it as is, but changing the underlying components that support that application. Database, web server are prime examples of that. So a little bit more work involved there, but however, more opportunity for cost savings and performance increases. Refactoring is really taking a look at, hey, I want to completely refactor, re-architect our platform. It still needs to serve the same business purpose, but we want to take a look at some of the new modern technologies that the cloud services provide, specifically around serverless architecture, re-architecting some of their processes maybe into microservices. So a lot of our cloud providers that are out there today, you don't necessarily need to go manage servers. They already provide managed services for you to leverage a database. So you don't need to come to the table with a license. You don't need to stand up a server and install Oracle or SQL Server and then manage that. They do all that work for you, and you just have a database right there and ready for you, and you don't need to worry about patching or anything of that nature. So this is really an opportunity for you to take a look at your application. How can we re-architect this? This thing may be an ancient legacy heavy application that you can really take advantage of performance improvements by really re-architecting that into some of the modern services that they provide today. This obviously is a little bit more time and investment in money, but depending on what kind of business operations you're using with that, you're gonna, it may take a little bit more time to get the return on your investment. However, it's opportunity for growth. Repurchase is another one that we see, and I've been involved in many migrations where this is the kind of path that we go down, whereas our customers will decide to, instead of managing and building and maintaining an on-premise application or custom application, they're going to go out and look for software as a service solutions that provide that business functionality out of the box. It's a very less configurable type of solution, or more configurable type of solution, less application development. So this is essentially going out and purchasing the licenses for brand new software that you no longer need to maintain and support. And one of the benefits that we see here that I mentioned a little bit earlier is you're going to get new features and new releases of the software on a more regular basis versus having to worry about your team managing and supporting and understanding all the different changes that are required to support your business. It's all going to happen through the software as the software as a service provider. And then finally, the last two, maybe it's not the right time to move to the cloud, right? So you're going to go down the route of retaining. So just keep the system as is, no change, and potentially revisit at a later date. And some of the factors that could cause that are really resources, time, money, and then also even regulatory constraints. So if your company is regulated by a regulatory body like the FDA, for example, in pharma, there might be some regulatory constraints that are preventing you from moving your data into the cloud. Even some of the European data requirements, you might not necessarily be able to go ahead and put all your data in the cloud just yet. So that's something that you need to consider. And then finally, retire. As you assess your application portfolio and you go through this assessment, you might identify some of these applications either aren't being used or really no longer supported by your business process. It's an opportunity to go and actually decommission and retire this to make your application portfolio a little bit more efficient and not so and not maintaining applications that you don't necessarily need to maintain anymore, right? So with all of these, again, this is really that assessment part of this, and this is really going to drive your transformation and your management approach, and all the different assets that you need to evaluate here is really cost, time, and money. What's the best approach? What's the best benefit you're going to get out and return on investment in the long run? So with that, speak a little bit about the impacts, right? So as we do migrate into cloud environments, these are some of the benefits that you're going to get from moving into the cloud, right? One is operational efficiencies. I know I mentioned this a little bit earlier, but Now you can redirect your time and money towards business development, new ideation of new products, new ideas. How are you going to build your business versus spending that time and money on operating data centers? Well, now you can funnel those resources into actually building out your business and looking for additional opportunities and new products. Another is reliability, right? So with reliability, you need a plan for disaster recovery, backups, things of that nature. Within the cloud solution providers, you can easily stand up your infrastructure in multiple different regions across the country or even globally to be able to ensure that you can have automated failover, automated backups, things of that nature that are really going to allow you to quickly recover from a disaster. And the way some of these regions are set up, like for example, within AWS, they do thorough planning in terms of where they position their data centers throughout the country to reduce risks of earthquakes and things of that nature to ensure that they're pretty well spread out across the globe. Performance is another one. Along with a lot of the managed services that our cloud providers provide, performance is one of the key things that you're going to get to take advantage of, right? To be able to either quickly scale up or quickly scale down, and we'll show a little bit of that today, but to also easily deploy your application in a global environment, right? So at the click of a button, you could replicate your entire application globally, so your colleagues out in Europe aren't, dealing with latency and performance delays trying to access a system that's over here in the United States. So, very quickly and easily can do that. Cost savings obviously is a big one. You're paying for services that you're actually using versus pre-planning, standing up servers that are sitting there running all day long that you might not actually be using. You may be using them at a small period of time, but you're not using them at all the time. So this is really the idea of on-demand pricing, only paying for the services that you use. So that's a real critical factor within some of the impacts to doing cloud migrations, is really evaluating the cost savings. And then the new capabilities, as I mentioned, with platform as a service, you get those new capabilities folded into your product much sooner than if you were doing them yourself. And then also, for example, with AWS, every week, every month, they're coming out with new services that you can quickly tap into and integrate into some of the applications that you have today to start taking advantage of those new capabilities. So with that, I'm going to dive a little bit into CGI's Intelligent Migration Platform. So this is really a tool that we would use if we think of the 3 R's or the 6 R's. Let's go back to that actually really quick. So if you're rehosting, replatforming, or refactoring, or even repurchasing, each one of these, in the example of a document migration, you would essentially need to move the data from the source environment into the target cloud environment. So we built a tool called CGI's Intelligent Migration Platform, specifically focused on document migration capabilities. And the reason for that, there's many tools out there that can do ETL, moving data around. However, coming from the enterprise document management space, doing a lot of migrations, we decided to develop our own migration utility to support our clients in moving their documents and metadata from their enterprise document management systems from their source to the target. And that's whether it's cloud or not. A lot of our clients are going to the cloud, so this is a perfect use case for that. But even if it's just a normal upgrade of their environment from an older version to a new version where we actually need to move the documents and metadata, or they're just going through an upgrade to a new platform, one of the big ones that we see are really with mergers and acquisitions, right? So working within some of the pharmas that I've worked in, a lot of divesting of products or purchasing new products. And part of that involves acquiring all that content and metadata and getting it into your enterprise application so then it can be used by the entire company instead of operating in multiple different applications that ultimately serve the same purpose. But what we wanted to do with this tool was really take advantage of some of the cloud technologies that are out there to really, let's build this as a high performance metadata transformation application so we can ultimately reduce time it takes to get from a source system to a target environment, minimizing impacts to the business. And then also some of the challenges that we face with a lot of our clients is really the data cleanup and the data discovery. So if they are doing a merger and acquisition, they may not have the confidence that the metadata that's tied to these contents are correct. So we want to take advantage of automation and AI capabilities to support some of the data cleanup and data discovery to facilitate that migration, so we have good quality data that the business can trust and rely on as we move forward. So with that, I want to hit on two topics. One is really some of the data cleanup work, and then I'll finish with our scalable high performance architecture, and we'll give you a little bit of a demo of that. So I want to start with a metadata extraction with artificial intelligence use case. So within the regulatory space, a lot of the pharma companies that we work for, they're global companies, and they have regulatory documents all spread out globally, right? They have an enterprise system. However, not everybody's using that enterprise system globally, but they want to transition all their users into that environment. But they have many repositories spread across all the different countries. And that data needs to be cleaned up in order to be brought into a new platform. Another client we had, they already have a regulatory enterprise system. However, they don't trust the accuracy of the data that's in there. So they want to, analyze and assess that data to see if it actually is classified appropriately, or we got to go reclassify it. And then, as I mentioned earlier, a lot of mergers and acquisitions. So as we're acquiring new companies or new products, they get all that content and metadata, and before they upload it into their new environments, they want to make sure it's either classified correctly. Do they even need to retain it anymore based on the retention policies? So these are three different use cases that we've seen at some of the different clients in terms of we got to go do this information extraction to be able to bring it into the enterprise system, because we don't want to bring in bad data. And then ultimately, we need to automate this as much as we can, because it's going to reduce the manual, costly processes of going through all this information individually, opening up documents and figuring out what document is this? Is this a policy, a procedure, a batch record? We can use artificial intelligence to support some of that metadata classification. Some of the key areas that you want to understand is, how many files are out there? What's the quantity? The taxonomy, the master data. So what is the metadata that we do need to extract out of there? And what's the master data of that client in terms of their product lists, things of that nature that you can then use to feed into some of these models to help extract that data. One of the key things is business owner commitment, right? So you're not necessarily using AI. You're not going to get 100% recommendation out of, you need to identify, different confidence levels in terms of, hey, if the outcome of this automated process is telling me, hey, I'm 80% confident that this is a policy and procedure, we need to define those confidence levels, but we also need that business owner commitment with that to ensure that anything that falls out of that confidence level, maybe we do manual reviews of that information. But ultimately, there's a lot of pre-processing that we need to do on that content to even be able to feed it into some of these AI models to be able to support automated classification. So I just wanted to touch on a little bit here. Just these are some of the different scenarios, real world scenarios that we've seen with some of our clients. And what we did as an add-on to CGI's intelligent migration platform, we have classification as a service. And this is really leveraging different technologies that are out there, from OCRing, natural language processing, and machine learning. But ultimately, the idea here is that we would go out and leverage. We need to train these models, right? First, we can't just feed documents into a model that's not trained and expect it to tell us what the classification is or what metadata is in there. We need to work with our clients to understand, what data do they have today that they are confident in, right? What documents and metadata and classification, and use that information to feed it into our training models to then be able to, leverage NLP and machine learning against these models, and to develop these artificial intelligence algorithms to really say, hey, as I feed in this document, I need you to tell me whether it's like I said, a policy or a procedure, and or extract additional metadata out of there. So we have built a framework that allows us to design those models using NLP and machine learning to feed in that training data, but then to be able to access this via whether it's through an API, and whether or not you want to do ad hoc classification or batch classification or bulk classification. And really the idea is, hey, we have this engine that has this information. As somebody needs to bring a document into a system, they have the ability to tap into this engine to ultimately classify it and pull out the appropriate metadata. Or if we're doing, if there's doing bulk uploads into a system, we can then leverage this utility to be able to go through and provide those recommended values to an end user that they can review and confirm prior to actually bringing it into a system. And then for us, where I've seen this used heavily is where our large volume data migrations, right? So as we're doing a lot of our document migrations with these mergers and acquisitions, we want to be able to bulk classify a lot of these documents before we even bring them in to ensure that we're dealing with reliable data that's highly searchable and highly usable for the business. Building this framework, though, with the API type structure, it does enable us to fold in a little bit of automation intelligence and robotics processing automation to support, hey, like maybe you can go email a document to a certain address. It will go then grab that document, feed it through this engine, and then automatically upload it into the system. So there are the ideas around that intelligent automation and RPA that we can fold into this process as well. But that's a little bit about some of the data cleanup that we do with our clients. I'm going to quickly hop over into a different aspect of our tool set, right? Part of that whole cloud journey, right, is taking advantage of the high performance servers that you have out there and the ability to scale up and down as need be relatively quickly. So this is a good example of how we implemented this within our CGI intelligent migration platform. So we have the process of exporting documents out of source systems, transforming that information, and then importing it into a target environment. You're going to be dependent on your source and target systems in terms of their ability to process information quickly. So sometimes in terms of high performance, you don't really have that flexibility of extracting information and loading it in because you're dependent on those systems. However, we do have full control over the data transformation process. And we've worked with legacy tools in the past that weren't that efficient, very slow in terms of data transformation. So when we built this new tool set, that's really one of the things we wanted to focus on. How can we increase performance? Because this is one of the drawbacks that we have with clients is we got to transform tens of millions of documents. And it can take several days to do that work. How can we get that work done in one day? So we took a message queue approach to this to be able to do highly concurrent, highly scalable services that can really process thousands and thousands of messages across many different servers and many different processes relatively quickly. So essentially, not necessarily batching everything up, but we're taking, let's say for every document that we need to transform, we feed it into a queue, and then we have different processing engines that are out there that are grabbing those messages and doing those individual document transformations. Instead of going through a loop and doing all that stuff, we can attack all these transformations very quickly through multiple different servers and multiple different cores. So one of the things that you're going to see here is ultimately we kick off our transformation process. We queue up all of our documents, our transformation messages that we want to transform. And then we have one or more servers sitting out here that have our transformation processing engine sitting there waiting for these messages. So as they get fed into the queue, they're going to go in there and continually process all these messages. If we need to scale up, we can just add on an additional server to then start processing those messages out there. So that's really the horizontal scaling benefits that we can get out of this process. So it all depends on our client. If we have a lot to transform, then we would set up our infrastructure with multiple servers to process that information. However, if we're doing a smaller migration where there's only 100,000 documents to transform, we really don't need to scale up. But the good thing here is that it takes seconds to scale up, and you only need that server for the time you're using it to transform. And then when you're not doing that transformation, you can scale that down, and there's your cost savings right there. You don't have a server just sitting out there waiting to be used, costing money. And then we can also scale our cores up on this given server. So we could vertically scale this to increase the number of processes that we have out there. And that's very quickly and easily done within cloud service providers as well. And I'm going to show that in a second here. So I guess with that, before I hop into the demo, I will pause. Are there any questions so far? I know we're about 37 minutes in, but I wanted to give an opportunity if there's any questions before I dive into the demo.
I just have one quick question. It's a great presentation so far. Could you just give me a kind of a clarifying, simple definition of metadata?
Yes, sorry. I do need to clarify that, because depending on what world you come in, there could be many different things.
Thank you.
For me, within enterprise content management, I think of metadata, or when I say metadata, I mean you got a document and then all the properties related to that document. So I call it metadata. You could call it attributes, you could call it properties. It really all depends kind of your background. But essentially, it's the title of a document. When was it authored? Who authored it? What's the type of document? So all those attributes relating to that document, that's what I'm referring to as metadata.
Great, thank you.
No problem.
Hey, Jeff, I'll jump in real quick. Great presentation so far, and it's really incredible to see what you're able to accomplish through the platform that you have, even with AI or machine learning. From your experience, what types of data can or cannot be moved to the cloud, and what types of data shouldn't be moved?
Good question. I think in terms of what types of data, I don't think there's any limitation in terms of what you can and can't move to the cloud, right? Anything you can do in an on-prem environment, you can do in the cloud nowadays. However, there's also the security concerns, right? Like PII information, personally identifiable information. I forget the acronym, but I know there's the European, what is it, GDPR, I believe. So there's certain information that you may not want in the cloud because you want to have more control over it. Because your cloud service providers are the ones maintaining the infrastructure, the security, and they got many procedures and processes in place, and been audited left and right. So you can trust that, but at the same time, you may want to have more control over your data from a security perspective, and you're not necessarily ready and willing to place that information into a cloud. And the real concern really around that would be more around security around PII, personally identifiable information, credit card information, things of that nature that you really want to have a little bit more control over. But there's really no limit, right? There's really nothing that says you can't put it all out there. It really all depends on your process and your exposure to that data.
Gotcha. And then just a follow-up question with that, just something out of curiosity that I was thinking as you were presenting. How do cloud service providers vary depending on the user's operating system? And does that have an influence on the ability of the CSP to work effectively?
Can you repeat that? I'm not sure I got the first part of that.
Yeah, absolutely. So depending on, the user's operating system, if they're using a Mac or if they're using a Windows interface, does it really, have that much of an influence, or does it affect the ability of that cloud service provider to work effectively?
I would say no, because from an end user's perspective, whether or not you're whatever browser you're using, whatever application you're using, whether that application's on-prem or in the cloud, those end users really don't know the difference, right? Because for example, if we were just rehosting a platform from on-prem to the cloud, you're not going to have any impact from an end user accessing that application. There might be some security security configurations that you're going to need to change that allow that user to access that. But in terms of what operating system you're using or browser, it really should be transparent to the user and shouldn't have that much of an impact, if any at all.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Cool, thanks. So with this, I'm just going to do a quick presentation just to kind of show you in real time. Can you guys see my screen? It should say CGI Intelligent Migration Platform.
Yep, can see it.
Awesome. Let me just refresh this, make sure things are working. All right. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to log in here, and I'm not going to give you a full demo of our tool set. We don't have enough time to do that today, but I want to show you the data transformation aspect of this. So when it comes to document migrations, as I mentioned, you got to export the information, you got to transform it, and then ultimately import it. And that's essentially what this tool set provides for us. So we would configure exporters to pull information out. We would ultimately configure as importers to pull information in. Let's go ahead and select the project so you can see an example. For example, we do support many different platforms as it stands right now, whether it's file share, document, or Viva Vault. I'm not going to get into that, but ultimately we scan information out into this platform, but we need to transform it. So I want to give you an example of just seeing how quickly you can scale a process up to be able to take advantage of that, scaling up a server really quickly and turning it down when you don't need it. So we have a document collection in here of 50,000 documents, and I'm going to show you the process of doing a transformation. So as we scan everything into our platform, we ultimately need to build rules around how we transform this data. And again, this is just mock data, but ultimately it's we have the ability to specify many different rules, whether you're concatenating values, defining constant types, converting data types, or even writing a little Python script to do transformations of data, converting things to uppercase, lowercase, things of that nature. We essentially need to build all these rules out, because if you're going from an as-is system to an as-is system, a lot of this stuff's one-to-one. But if you're re-architecting a platform or redesigning your data model in a new platform, or if you're purchasing a software as a service, that data model is going to be completely different than the one that you're coming out of your source environment in. It's going to have some of the same elements that you need to support your business, but you're going to need to transform those attribute values in order to support that new target platform. So one of the things our tool set does is you build out all these rules, but we need to then transform and process all those rules, so then we have our output that we can then migrate. This is where we really targeted the high performance metadata transformation. So I'm just going to quickly go ahead and click this button, but what you'll see is we're transforming. There's a total of 50,000 documents. I already did transformation on them, but I'm going to run it again. But you'll see the total duration of this was 48 seconds, and I'm going to run that right now, and you'll see estimated duration on this. So let me kick this off. And it takes a second to kick off, but once it started, we should see a status bar come across here, and you'll see current duration and estimated duration. So we'll just let this run for a second, but ultimately what this is doing is exactly what we saw in that presentation. It queued up all those transformation messages, and we have one server out there right now processing all those messages, and it's going through and completing that. And you'll see that actually, if we look at our queue server, you'll see all those messages coming into here. And ultimately this, as it refreshes, will start to come down as our server is going out there and processing that information. We'll let this finish. And so it took approximately just under 50 seconds to transform those 50,000 documents. And that's great, right? Like in terms of real world situation, like if we needed millions and millions of documents to transform, this is really where the scalability is going to come in. I don't really need to stand up another server just to cut this time in half, but just to show you how quickly we can do that, I'm going to go into our AWS management console, and I already have our one processing server up and running right now that just did the work for that. But I'm just going to easily just go ahead and click on this server, which is just an exact copy of this one that has those same processes running on it. I'm going to go ahead and start this instance up. Just give it a second to fully start. And then if I come over here, just to confirm that we should see this, a new instance pop up over here. So this is in here now. So now essentially we have another server, as we mentioned right here. I just essentially stood up another server over here that's going to allow me to essentially double the amount of processing that I was doing with just one server. So now that that's up and running, I'm going to come over here and re-kick this process off. And we'll cross my fingers that live demos actually work, because there's always hiccups when you try doing a live demo. So now we actually have two different servers that are going to go through here and process this information. And already you can see estimated time is much lower than before, and this should finish in roughly 26 seconds. So you'll see at the click of a button, we can go into our cloud environment and spin up a brand new server that's going to allow me to double my capacity in terms of processing this information. Now, if we were in a data center, right, physical servers, if I needed to go stand up another server to scale up very quickly, there's a lot that goes into that, a lot of planning, purchasing, installing the server, the software, all that stuff. And it could take you a couple weeks before you get that server, whereas I could quickly stand that up and I just cut my processing time in half. So very good use case of how you can scale up servers to within the cloud to really transform your applications to be more of a high performing application that you may have not had in the past. So with that, I wanted to close out with a couple different points in terms of some of the work that we do within Waterville, right? So we do have an established office within the Waterville, and it's essentially one of our delivery centers that we use for, developing out jobs and skills within the local community to support some of the projects that we do globally as well. So not only is it just work local to clients in Waterville, it's work that's global to our clients that we can leverage our Waterville Delivery Center to support some of our clients. What we're using Waterville for now, which is great, is that with the development of this IP, the Intelligent Migration Platform, we wanted to take advantage of the Waterville Delivery Center to support local development, local resources to come on and support the development of this application. So really, we wanted to have them come on board to help build out the new application, be a part of the innovation, and train our users up to support, train our employees up to support some of the migration projects that we have out there today, and really to drive member growth within CGI and locally within the community itself. So really, as I mentioned, focusing on job growth, we have the potential to add 40 to 55 new positions. Some of that supporting our migration utility that I just showed you today. And some of the other areas that we're focusing on are intelligent automation, and that's some of the other areas that we're looking to hire within Waterville to support some of our clients. Some of the local partnerships that we have, like the talk that we're having today, and ultimately, investing back into the community as well. So these are some of the things that we're working closely with Waterville on within our CGI office up there, and it's really a good way to build growth locally within the community, interact with the community, and that's one of the key core values within CGI with that proximity model, is not only be close to our clients, but also be close to our community, and build up the community itself. And that's really all I wanted to touch on today. So I do appreciate everyone's time. I'm surprised I was able to keep that within 40 minutes, but I wanted to thank everybody for giving me the opportunity to demonstrate some of our capabilities at CGI, as well as showcase our intelligent migration platform, as well as scalability and how quickly you can do that. So with that, Sabrina, I'll hand it back to you if there's any questions. I think we can use the remaining time for that.
Fantastic, Jeff. Thank you so much. I guess we'll open up the floor to questions if anyone has anything that they'd like to pose to Jeff about the presentation or about CGI overall.
I hate to be a question hog, but I do have another one.
Yeah, go for it, please.
Can you explain what does or does not count as a document? Is there any kind of data that wouldn't be appropriate for the migration tool?
Yes. So there's a couple decisions that we need to make when we go about our document migrations, right? One is, well, these enterprise content management platforms typically house, all the content that an enterprise would need to leverage, and ultimately they use it for authoring, reviewing, and approval, making them effective so members can use these documents. So it maintains older versions, the life cycle, the workflows of an entire document, all the metadata associated with it. But so everything in those systems are typically something you may need to migrate, but we go through an evaluation process. Have these documents reached their retention life? Pardon me, I got my phone ringing in the background. So the retention policy, so maybe you only need to retain these documents for another 50 years, right? And hey, maybe it reached the retention policy, so you no longer need to migrate that information across. Sometimes older versions of these documents aren't really relevant to the company anymore or not needed. They only need the latest version. So you need to go through those assessments to identify what's imperative, what's important to the business operation, and then what are your regulatory obligations in terms of maintaining that information. So you could be looking at a system that's got 10 million documents in it, but after you go through that evaluation, you maybe only need to migrate 4 million of those.
I see. That's great. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I'll jump in again, Jeff. Really incredible also to see what's going on in Waterville, especially. I know we're very fortunate to have CGI here and contributing to the economic revitalization and also the workforce development that's been going on. So it's been really great working with your team and being able to feature you here today. Something I'm curious about within your line of work and also with CGI is, what are some of the industries that you work closely with to implement document migration?
For me, it's been life sciences industry heavily for me. That's not to say that work isn't there in other industries, because I've also done work in the financial industry, moving a lot of millions and millions and millions of pages and pages and pages of data that we needed to merge together in a document. But so I would say financial industry for sure. I've been heavily in the life sciences industry, but really when you think about it, there's really no industry that you couldn't use this for, right? Because depending on the maturity of a company and depending on some of the regulatory requirements of a company is really going to drive how well they structure their content, and how well they manage that. So that's why when it comes to financial and life sciences, they're regulated industries. So they're required to manage their content in a certain way, and therefore there's a lot of opportunity for us in those areas. Whereas some other companies that we deal with, early maturity or just, I hate to say, but just completely disorganized, they don't even have content management systems and the stuff just sitting out there on file shares, and they don't know what they have or how they have it. And there are opportunities to go in there and apply automated artificial intelligence and automation to really go through and mine that content so they know what they have and can organize it and put it into an enterprise type system.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yep, no problem.
So when you have, oops, oh, okay, I thought I was on mute. When you bring on a client, and I assume that typically you talk to them about your migration platform.
Mm-hmm.
Is it part of your strategy do you develop the rules, or is that something that's pretty intuitive that the user can kind of write their own rules? That's
a great question. It's a mix of both. So depending on the type of system they're going into. So I'll give an example of a Viva Vault application. They're a software as a service provider, and they have a great enterprise cloud-based solution for content management. But what they bring to the table is life science industry specific pre-built applications. So you're not going in there and saying, okay, here's a blank application, I need to configure it up. Well, no, they come to the table with applications that support quality document migration, electronic trial master documentation, regulatory information management. So knowing some of and a lot of those are industry common models that they implement because they're regulated bodies, hey, this is the type of data that you need to maintain. So with that information and doing multiple migrations over and over, you tend to know what these models look like. So we come to the table with pre-built or predefined rules in terms of building out this information or building out these rules for our clients. But it's critical though, we need to bring industry experience to the table. So we can't come to the table with, hey, I got a developer, and I got a business analyst, but they know nothing about the industry, right? Because then we're fully dependent on the business, which that's not what they want. That's not why they hire us, right? So we want to bring to the table that industry experience to be able to help assess their information and define those rules based on those industry standard models. So it's a little bit of both. You know, we've gone in there and done all the rules ourselves. We've gone in there and relied on the business to do them. But nowadays, as we transition, we like bringing that industry experience to the table to support some of those assessments.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Any other questions, Sabrina?
Sure. Just pausing here to see if anyone has anything else they'd like to ask to Jeff. All right. Well, thank you, Jeff, for your insightful presentation, and to our audience for joining us this afternoon. This conversation has been recorded and will be available at a later date for viewing on our YouTube channel. Next month, Dirigo Labs will be featuring Sasha Derry of Blue Shift Aerospace, who will be discussing how Blue Shift is revolutionizing space travel sustainably on Thursday, March 10th at noon. For more information on upcoming speaker series, please visit our website at centralmaine.org or dirigolabs.org and click on our speaker series tab. Thank you for joining us this afternoon, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your week.